Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP, joined by Carl Cannon, our Washington bureau chief and executive editor, and Phil Wegman. He is our White House reporter. Carl, I'm coming to you on this one. Our next subject is Kamala Harris and what comes next for her. And I'm coming to you because California's your home state, or was at one point. And the rumor is she's going to run for governor of California. And what do you make of that? Is that a good spot for her?
Well, the governor there is now Gavin Newsom, and they've been longtime frenemies. I don't think he wants to switch jobs with her. I don't think Gavin wants to be vice president necessarily. As Phil pointed out, though, we're hearing this not from Kamala Harris, but from other people. And she just ran a tough campaign. She didn't get a lot of compliments for how this campaign was run. What she's gotten from Democrats, however, that she's apparently taking solace in is, it wasn't your fault. It was Joe Biden's fault, not your fault. That's what she's hearing from fellow Democrats. But the California governorship, it's never been considered a job that's a participation trophy or a consolation prize. And so she's going to have
or a demotion.
A California governor would say that that's not a demotion from VP to governor. It's like Chicago's mayor, Tom. You know that. But she's going to have to earn it. California is now a one-party state, essentially. And they have these, what they call these jungle primaries. It's everybody's on the ballot. Then the first two vote getters square off. She's got, better name ID now than anybody in that state other than
I was going to say, Carl, who could possibly beat her?
And Gavin. Well, one-on-one, I don't know. Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, I don't know. Well, you laugh. Ronald Reagan. They laughed at Ronald Reagan.
They laughed at Arnold, but I mean, of course, that was a different era. Phil, what do you make of this?
I don't know if it was a different era, but my point is she'd have to earn it, Tom. She'd have to run, and she'd have to run a good campaign.
I think it's hers for the taking if she wants it. The question is, does she want it, and why does she want it? Does she want it as some sort of keep her in the limelight, stepping stone back to the nomination at some point?
All right, wait a minute. Before you go to Phil, though, I will say one thing. There's a funny historic precedent that comes to mind if you're a Californian of a certain age. Richard Nixon was vice president to Dwight Eisenhower. In 1960, he ran against Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s uncle, Jack Kennedy. He lost, closer election than this one, but a close election, very close. Then Nixon went back to his native California and ran for governor. And everybody thought it was his for the taking, Tom, and he got his clock clean by Jerry Brown's father, Pat Brown. So, and he said famously, you won't have Dick Nixon to kick around anymore.
That's right.
Well, so it sounds like you're telling Tom we will have Kamala Harris to kick around anymore.
Well, I don't see anybody out there who, and I'm not an expert on that state, but I mean, maybe there's somebody rising and waiting in the wings who has the fundraising capacity to match her in terms of dollars raised and get their name ID. But I mean, she would go in there, in my opinion, as a heavy, heavy favorite if she wanted the job. But Phil, back to you. The question is, does she want the job? And if she does want, why would she want it?
It's certainly a worthwhile prize. I mean, California, if it was its own country, would be the world's fifth largest economy. The question that follows, though, is what does she want it for? Because if she's looking to use California as a springboard back to the Democratic nomination, it sort of depends on whether or not Democrats double down on sort of the liberalism that we saw fail during the last election. California's already moved so far to the left that if there's a wake-up call, one that's being led by folks like Senator John Fetterman, then perhaps that's not something that's wanted. I mean, all of the historical examples that Cannon gave, Ronald Reagan, Nixon, all of these others, that's from years gone by, and also
Pleistocene era is the technical term, Phil.
Yeah, the Bronze Age.
Carl started covering politics, right?
Well, but Phil, the thing is, what does she want it for? Well, there's 1,000 jobs in politics. There's only one president. being governor of California may be a job that she could do and do well, and she wouldn't necessarily need to parlay into the presidency. Everybody, it used to be in this country, if you're governor of New York or California, you'd immediately talk, or senator from those states, you'd be talked about presidential. It's not quite the same these days, but she doesn't have executive experience. If she ran the state and ran it well, she could have a second act where people said, well, we should have given her, let's give her another
to a national political reporter. Everything is a national political story.
Okay.
But wait a minute.
Yeah.
So she would get elected, right?
Yeah.
She'd be inaugurated in what? She run in 26. Is that right?
Yeah.
So she'd be inaugurated in 27.
She'd
have to immediately.
She's only 60 years old, Tom.
No, but I'm saying
we
if
now
she
elect
wanted to
presidents
use
who are 80. She'd have another 20 years.
She couldn't run for president in 28, is what I'm saying.
That's right.
She would immediately have to start like running for president. So putting together, so she'd have to wait and hope, I guess, that Republicans won, that JD Vance became the president, and then she could challenge JD Vance. And what are we talking about? 32?
2032. You just said Vance versus Harris. There you go.
Time is a flat circle. We would get a VP debate finally, the
Hey.
one that was scheduled.